An encounter so awkward that the man wished he could crawl into a mouse hole. He had only secretly sketched the woman sitting across from him, yet she casually unwrapped the chocolate placed on the table and began enjoying it as if nothing had happened. The man froze for a moment, a flash of surprise flickering in his eyes. In an attempt to assert himself before this unusual woman, he broke off a piece of chocolate and put it into his mouth, then looked at her with a hint of playful provocation. However, she seemed completely unaffected by him, and instead calmly broke off another piece of chocolate and placed it gracefully between her lips. This peculiar encounter amused them both immensely. They exchanged glances and smiled, marveling at their unspoken chemistry. Just as the man was about to speak and break the silence, the woman suddenly reached her stop at the most inconvenient moment. She rose lightly to her feet and left, carrying with her the lingering scent of chocolate.
It's all yours.
In response to Cameron's goodwill, she offered no words, only a meaningful glance over her shoulder filled with emotion. At the very moment Cameron was about to step off the train as well, he suddenly realized that the identical chocolate in his own pocket remained completely untouched. Only then did it dawn on him that he had unknowingly performed a scene of hilariously embarrassing misunderstanding. Yet fate always weaves extraordinary encounters in its own mysterious way, as if guided by destiny itself. The very next day, Cameron unexpectedly ran into the woman again. She eagerly began explaining the misunderstanding from yesterday.
I also purchased the Echo Bar, and I'm hoping you worked that out by now, yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to see your face when you realize.
To express his apology, Cameron presented her with the carefully drawn portrait he had made. Before either of them could take things further, they inexplicably smiled at each other and then shook hands in farewell. But the moment he turned away, Cameron immediately began to regret not asking for her contact information. Just then, the woman suddenly called out to him.
Here.
Oh no, that's for you. Keep it.
Give it to me again.
Okay.
Faced with her warm gesture, Cameron smiled with childlike innocence, and happiness quietly illuminated his eyes. A love that flows both ways is always passionate and beautiful, and before long they built a family together. Not long after, his wife gave birth to a bright and clever son. Their home felt like the warmth of spring sunlight, with a future that seemed brilliantly bright. However, it seemed that heaven did not fully favor them, as Cameron recently began experiencing sudden waves of dizziness, as though the entire world were spinning in an instant. He tried his best to stay conscious, but eventually he collapsed to the ground, unable to control it. After a thorough medical examination, he received a devastating diagnosis. He was suffering from an illness that could not be cured. Cameron thought several times about telling his wife the truth, yet whenever the words reached his lips, he swallowed them back down. He remembered how she had been shattered by her younger brother's passing, how she had cried for months and even isolated herself in her room for half a year in an attempt to heal. Cameron knew how deeply she cherished her family and how fragile her heart could be, and he feared she would not survive another loss. So he chose silence, burying his helplessness and fear deep within his heart. Cameron felt an unprecedented sense of loneliness and despair, and as he looked at the warm smiles of his wife and child, a wave of sorrow quietly filled his heart. This happiness felt as fragile as glass, and he knew that once he was gone, everything beautiful would shatter like a fading illusion. While wandering at the edge of despair, Cameron suddenly recalled an advertisement he had once glimpsed about human cloning, and a far more difficult choice now stood before him. As his life approached its end, should he confess everything to his family, or allow a clone to continue loving them in his place? Clearly, Cameron chose the latter. With complicated emotions weighing on his heart, Cameron sought out the doctor and expressed his willingness to join the cloning program. Yet when he first saw his clone with his own eyes, he could not help but feel astonished. The figure before him was identical in every way, from height and facial features to even the faint patterns on his skin, as though reflected perfectly in a mirror. The only detail distinguishing them was an extra mole on the clone's hand. Although Cameron had prepared himself mentally before arriving, when he truly faced the clone who would replace him, he found himself unable to accept it calmly, overwhelmed by resistance and an indescribable panic. The professor perceived his hesitation and gently introduced him to another female clone. She was an ordinary office worker living a simple yet fulfilling life, and she had never known that she herself was a clone. What brought Cameron the greatest comfort was quietly observing this clone mother with her daughter, witnessing the most authentic form of happiness. The clone mother cared for her child with selfless love, and these tender scenes felt like golden fields under warm sunlight, filling Cameron's heart with peace. He imagined that his own wife and son could live just as happily with the clone by their side. When Cameron returned home and looked at his bright son and gentle wife, he smiled with warmth and affection, yet that very warmth pierced his heart like a thorn. As he continued watching them, his eyes grew moist, and the storm of his inner conflict crashed repeatedly against his soul like restless waves. He understood that he could not selfishly abandon his family, and perhaps allowing another Cameron to continue this love was the best choice. So Cameron made his decision, telling his wife he would be away on a business trip for a few days and assuring her not to worry. In reality, he severed his emotions and went alone to reactivate the cloning program. He began transferring his memories into the clone, his consciousness flowing like a quiet stream into the clone's mind. Fragments of his life, like ancient paintings gently brushed by the hand of time, gradually became clear within the clone's awareness. The sweetness of meeting his wife, the precious moments spent with his son, and the beautiful memories of their family of three all flashed through his mind like scenes from a moving carousel. As the transfer completed, those perfect memories were flawlessly replicated inside the other Cameron. The moment the clone slowly opened his eyes, his life trajectory completely merged with Cameron's own. The doctor immediately informed the clone that he was created to replace someone else, yet the clone showed no resistance, because his mind now contained all of Cameron's memories, and the warmth of family and the earlier struggles over cloning felt as real as lived experience. At that very time, Cameron was immersed in joyful moments playing video games with his son, their laughter echoing warmly between them, but sudden dizziness struck like a dark force pulling him into an abyss. Fortunately, in the final moment before losing consciousness, he managed to end the video call in time. This made Cameron profoundly realize that the hourglass of his life had nearly run out, and the time left to him was painfully short. When Cameron saw the activated clone, it was clear that he was far calmer than before. They did not need many words between them, because both understood the responsibility they carried. However, not everything went smoothly, and a problem arose during the first real test. The clone would replace him in speaking with his wife, and when the video call connected, the clone, who had seemed slightly nervous, suddenly became composed the moment he saw her. He had completely immersed himself in the role, even forgetting that he was in fact a clone. He chatted with his wife with ease, and they laughed together as if they were the closest couple in the world. Meanwhile, Cameron standing nearby felt increasingly uneasy. His hands clenched tight, his eyes filled with anger and jealousy. It felt as though everything that belonged to him was about to be taken away by this substitute. At last, he could no longer endure the torment and abruptly ended the call. The sudden action instantly angered the clone, and the two quickly fell into an argument.
You think I like this? Talking to my wife under a spotlight? She's not your wife!
Their words grew intense and their emotions surged, each pouring out frustration and resentment. In the midst of the quarrel, Cameron's illness struck again. The clone, coming back to his senses, began to blame himself. He knew he was only a replacement, but the call with Cameron's wife had made him briefly forget his identity as a clone. Yet this experience also made them realize that they were bound together by a shared destiny. The doctor comforted the clone and explained that it was not his fault, because he carried not only Cameron's memories but also his emotions and experiences in their entirety. At this moment, you are another Cameron, and in truth there is no difference between you. When Cameron awoke from his faint, the clone took the initiative to apologize. In fact, they both understood that neither of them was fully prepared. Before being completely replaced, a powerful impulse rose within Cameron, and he longed to return home to say a final goodbye to his wife and son. But just as he returned and prepared to enter the house, the relentless illness struck once again. He felt the world spinning violently and collapsed uncontrollably to the ground. If his wife were to discover everything, all of their plans would fall apart. Fortunately, Cameron regained consciousness at a critical moment. He struggled into his car, and through the window his longing gaze fixed upon his wife standing so close, her face like a brilliant flower across the shore, radiant yet unreachable. Cameron's condition worsened again under the weight of these helpless emotions. He deeply understood that he had completely lost the ability to appear normally before his family, and his time was truly running out. To ensure the clone could replace him seamlessly without revealing any flaw, Cameron needed to spend time with the clone and search for the subtle differences between them in daily life. What frightened them both, however, was how astonishingly similar they were. Whether it was their calm and reserved temperament or their meticulous habits, they were like reflections in a mirror with no visible difference. The only distinction was that Cameron's life was nearing its end, while the clone could continue living in his place in good health. In the end, the clone returned to that warm and loving home in Cameron's stead. His wife sensed nothing unusual, because the clone behaved exactly like Cameron, but at the moment they embraced, the family dog barked continuously. Perhaps in the dog's eyes, the clone could never truly replace his real owner. Cameron's wife did not grow suspicious because of the dog's reaction, and she immersed herself completely in the joy of reunion. Meanwhile, the real Cameron could only watch his distant family through the lenses worn by the clone. He gazed at the smiling faces of his wife and son, and the corner of his mouth lifted gently without him realizing. Yet in the very next moment, a shadow fell over his heart, because he could only remain behind the scenes, grieving the happiness that should have been his.
I couldn't lose you, Cam. I couldn't live.
Once, Cameron believed that the happiness brought by the clone would flow on gently and endlessly, but as time passed, he gradually sensed something unusual. The clone began removing the lenses more and more frequently. After Cameron questioned the doctor, he explained that all clones initially struggle with the idea that they are merely replacements, so they tend to remove the lenses. However, the appearance of this behavior also meant that the clone was beginning to integrate into his new life. Although Cameron's heart was filled with resistance and confusion, whenever he thought of his wife and son's joyful smiles, he forced himself to swallow every doubt and resentment. He chose to endure, and he chose to sacrifice his own feelings. Yet the unease inside him moved like an undercurrent, always ready to break through the calm surface. Finally, one night, that emotion transformed into a dream and plunged him into deep fear. In the dream, he saw the clone striking his wife in anger. Cameron woke in a cold sweat, unable to put his mind at ease, and decided to secretly leave the laboratory to visit his family. On the way, he pondered how to face everything and how to restrain the overwhelming turmoil within his heart. When he finally arrived home, he did not dare to look at his wife and son directly. He feared that if he and the clone appeared at the same time, all preparations would collapse into nothing. Cameron quietly slipped into the study and looked at the painting created by the other version of himself. He understood that such an exquisite work could not be created without a peaceful mind and steady emotions. He sat silently on the sofa, the painting before him like a world both real and distant, and his thoughts wandered within it, unable to escape. Only when he turned on the computer did he see scenes of himself happily with his wife and son, moments he had never observed through the monitoring system. As he watched these images of happiness, the worry and doubt in his heart gradually faded away. When he reviewed the chat records between the clone and his wife, he discovered that every tender word and delicate gesture of care revealed deep love. At that moment, Cameron completely understood that the clone had been loving his wife wholeheartedly in his place. Suddenly, the clone appeared behind him. In the instant their eyes met, a surge of complicated emotion rose within Cameron. He had assumed the other would accuse him of selfishness and recklessness, yet what he saw in the clone's eyes was complete understanding and acceptance. Instead of driving him away, the clone gave him a chance to say goodbye. Just then, the dog suddenly ran in and, seeing two identical owners standing before it, appeared momentarily confused. Fortunately, it did not make a sound. After exchanging clothes, Cameron gently walked into his son's room. He softly woke the sleeping child, and then the two of them went to the living room to share some snacks. The clone quietly watched everything unfold, and a deep sense of sympathy for Cameron began to grow within his heart. For Cameron, these seemingly ordinary daily moments were priceless and almost impossible to reach. His son was immersed in the joy, unaware that this was his father's final farewell. His smile shone like sunlight, warming Cameron's heart. Yet that very smile was like a double-edged blade, bringing happiness while quietly piercing Cameron's heart. Cameron carefully studied his son's face, his eyes filled with love and regret. He knew he would not see his son grow up, would not attend his coming-of-age celebration, and would not witness his future wedding. He could only celebrate all of his son's life milestones in advance in this quiet way. At this moment, even his breathing trembled softly.
I love you, man.
I love you too, Dad.
I know.
After bidding his son a heartfelt goodbye, Cameron walked into the bedroom. He held his wife tightly, trying to pour all his love and reluctance into that embrace. His wife sensed that something was unusual, but she did not question him further, instead gently comforting him and telling him that everything would be all right. Cameron asked if she was satisfied with their life now, and she nodded without hesitation. The weight on Cameron's heart finally lifted, and he smiled sincerely, gazing at her with deep affection. He wished time could stop at this very second, as memories with his wife quietly surfaced before his eyes. He resented that their love had risen gently like the wind, yet he could not stay by her side until the very end. At the same time, he felt grateful that he would not have to witness her sorrow again, because not only had a clone filled his absence, but that person had perfectly preserved the happiness his wife and son now shared. Before leaving, Cameron solemnly placed the meaningful ring into his own hand. This gesture symbolized that Cameron entrusted everything to the other version of himself. Cameron said nothing more, because he knew the clone would cherish his wife and son with the same unwavering love. In the end, they shook hands in farewell, reconciled with one another, and completely withdrew from each other's lives. Not long afterward, the doctor cautiously informed Cameron that all the clone's memories about being a clone had been completely erased. Now he had fully become the version of you before the illness ever appeared. Cameron felt no strong reaction upon hearing this, because it was exactly the outcome he had hoped for. Unexpectedly, the doctor added that before the memory deletion, the clone had left him a gift, a recording about love, about his wife's sincere feelings for him.
Tell me you love me.
I love you. What are you doing?
Just come on, for real. I need to hear it.
I love you, Cameron Turner. Always have. And always will.
He knew that his wife truly loved him, that bond was unique and eternal, and no one could ever take that love away. Soon after, Cameron reached the end of his life on the cloning island. His passing was like the fall of a star, leaving behind deep regret. Yet in his final moment, he left his wife and son with the most romantic lie of all. I have sent an angel to continue loving you in my place. It was an angel he had carefully chosen and tested, and this time you must remain happy forever. Some say that a swan's final cry before death is especially beautiful, a sorrowful yet resolute farewell. Perhaps the film Swan Song takes its name from this idea, singing of determination and restraint, of letting go and unease, and of a love strong enough to release. Cloning, from an ethical perspective, has always been difficult to accept, as it challenges our understanding and boundaries of life itself. Yet when we stand at the crossroads of life, facing the reality of departure, would we be willing to let a clone take our place and continue caring for the people we love most? Watching yourself gradually being replaced is undoubtedly painful. However, in the name of love, should we choose to let that love continue through another? Perhaps you are me, and I am no longer myself. If I am about to lose everything, then please continue caring for the ones I love in my name.